Good morning. I'm glad you could join us. I want to share something I picked up from Philip Yancey, and I always like to say that it doesn't matter how much I read the Bible, I just always learn something new about this book. And one of the things that he says right at the outset is that the book of Colossians, it might sound like Ephesians. Now, I could think of some things that are similar between the two, and then there's a good reason for that. Half of the verses in Ephesians appear in some form in Colossians. Maybe not word for word, but yeah, those concepts are there. The two cities are neighbors. Well, they were back in Paul's day. And one of the converts from Paul's stay in Ephesus has taken the gospel to Colossae. And Paul himself has never visited Colossae, and thus writes a book to people known only to him by reputation. So he writes this letter. And what was happening was that the people there, and he kind of knew what was going on, but they were starting to get into, you kind of got the ABCs of the faith. I've met people say, oh yeah, I know what you're into, but like you're just like in like a 101 Sunday school class. I've grown out of the Bible and all that into the more advanced stuff. Well, I think that's kind of what they were into there, because he brings up for discussion a doctrinal flaw that has crept into their church. The best modern equivalent would be a cult, one that includes some Christian principles overlaid with some other mysterious beliefs. Kind of like, Jesus isn't quite good enough. Okay. Well, that's the point of the New Testament, is all of the New Testament writers are in certain ways are saying, you know what, Jesus really is good enough. As a matter of fact, this is what Paul writes to the church at Colossae. He is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn over all creation. Well, that's pretty impressive on your resume. For by him all things were created, things in heaven and on earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or powers or rulers or authorities, all things were created by him and for him. I mean, that's just a stinking wow if you take that in. He is before all things, and in him all things hold together. Now, I always like to point this out. All things hold together. Back when I was in college, and I had to take science courses to graduate, and there's a lot of stuff about science I like, but I just don't usually get the best grades in science classes. But when it comes to an atom, if I remember correctly, you've got electrons flying around the outside, and then in the nucleus, and they have negative charge, and then in the nucleus you've got the neutrons, which are no charge, and the protons, which are positively charged. And so if you take two magnets and you put the negative to the positive, it sticks. But if you put the positive to the positive, it repels. And yet at the core of every atom are protons, if I've got it right, and I think I do. They should repel each other. So what holds them together? It says right here that Christ holds all things together. Now, I brought that up in a college science class, and the teacher said something like an atomic bond or something. I don't think that's the term. That's something else, I think. But my point is, I'm like, well, what is it? And he had no idea. I suggested, is it maybe Elmer's glue? No, I really think it's Jesus that holds all things together. He is the head of the body, the church. He is the beginning and the firstborn from among the dead, so that in everything he might have supremacy. Everything, Jesus has supremacy. If you think that maybe Jesus isn't big enough for whatever problem you've got, reassess who Jesus is. For God was pleased to have all his fullness dwell in him, and through him to reconcile to himself all things, whether things on earth or things in heaven, and making peace through his blood shed on the cross. That's just a tidbit of what's in Colossians. 4 chapters. Check it out. It just points us to the supremacy of Jesus, and that, how about this for a slogan for today, for this week, for this year? Christ is enough. Jesus is enough. May you find him afresh and anew today. God bless you.